everybody. My name is John Coughlin, the owner of Daniel Smith, and today we're in the artist studio with artist Frank Eber. Frank is from Central California, and today Frank is going to show us his studio, show us his artwork. Frank, welcome.
Thank you, John. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. Very good. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
So if you could, Frank, if you could show us your studio and your artwork and maybe what you're working on, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So I'm gonna do a little tour of the studio first. Before I do that, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am pretty much a painter of many mediums, mostly watercolor. That's what I'm known for. However, I actually was trained in oils and gouache when I started art when I was a young man. So another thing I do a lot is basically paint oils. And right now, I actually have some commissions that I'm working on. So I thought I'd show those. And then, of course, I always keep going with my watercolors. That's what I do. But to me, I always say this in my workshops as well. Painting is painting. And the painting principles that I teach, they apply for everything. You know, to me, watercolor is just another medium. So I'm not particularly attached to it. I love painting. I love watercolor, but I love oil painting too. So, you know, that's just me. You may have seen this this big piece in the background already. This is a 46-inch wide oil painting of the Yellowstone River. So that is a commission piece. And it's about halfway done. You can see right now I'm working I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on the sky parts up here with the mountains. So getting these clouds right. Can you see this okay, John?
Yes, very well.
Oh, good. So that's the part I'm working on. The crazy thing with this lockdown, they call it a lockdown. I guess it's called more like a shelter at home situation right now, is that you get to do things that I usually don't get to do, you know, because there's a lot more time. So I'm doing things like this. This is a 40-inch drawing, a charcoal drawing that I did last weekend. And this is inspired by El Jaleo, which is one of Sargent's painting at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. And they had a performance there. This was probably 2 years ago now, where these girls did this dance, and they recorded it, and it was basically in honor of Sargent's painting, and it was amazing.
It's beautiful.
And the director of the museum lets me paint these. She's really nice. And because I contacted her and said if it was okay to, you know, do some stills, paint some stills from it. And she said, yeah, go ahead. So over here I have some of my watercolors here. I'm going to show some of those. That's a scene in Italy. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this was in Pisa. I just did this recently. And then we have, well, what's this here? That's a street scene in Boone, North Carolina, which I had taught last year there with Cheap Joe's. Yeah. And what else is here? Another Italian scene. And then this is a interesting scene. This is a guy I met in Mexico. He was the son of the owner who runs workshops there. His name is Getty, and he had this amazing skin color, and he was just sitting there and journaling. So I decided to paint that. And then over here, let's see, this is where I work on another commission, which is this guy with his fish. This is a watercolor. It's not quite done yet, but you can see the top part is face, and another commission just to keep it going. And then over here is my workstation. So we got the brushes and the palettes, and also this is the one I work with oils here. Get back a little bit. You can see the whole thing. I hope you can.
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. And then I use the way I paint is usually I project. I have an image on my computer here. This is another computer in the background. So I do work from photographs. I go sit back down. Most of the time, it's the plein air part is really just a small fraction of what most artists do. I mean, you do go out plein air painting, no question, but maybe every other week or something, because it's the plein air painting is very important because it teaches you how to understand the scene, how to look at a very complex scene in nature and sort of train yourself to make something with it. How do I arrange the elements? How do I edit it and that sort of thing? So it's very good for your painting skills. When you work from photograph, that step is usually already taken. So you have a picture and then you still might edit things, but the overall composition is already there,
Interesting.
So I show some of my tools right quick. So I'm using, in terms of brushes, my major brushes are the squirrel brushes, no question about it. These are Da Vinci's, and people can get them from me or from websites. There's no difference really. I have these in a couple sizes, and then interestingly enough, I always use I use these calligraphy brushes quite a bit too. So either Japanese or Chinese, and they come in different sizes as well.
And those are natural here, Frank, or those synthetic?
Those are natural. These are natural hair brushes, and these are very cheap brushes, but it doesn't matter because they make nice strokes, and so and some of these brushes here you can actually shape into make any shape you like here. For instance, here it looks like a flat brush right now.
Yes.
But if you put it on the side, it could be a rigger, So that's what I learned when I was in China and watched some of these painters. It was pretty incredible to see some people paint a painting with just one brush.
Wow.
And they just shape it into the shape they want at a certain time. So very interesting. And these are the hakes. You may have seen these, of course.
Yes.
These come into play for bigger washes, or sometimes you feather things out, you soften an edge or something. And then also the other one, the only other ones I have are these little synthetic round ones. They're also Da Vinci's. They just have a good point. So I'm definitely a Da Vinci guy.
So Frank, do you put your paints on a piece of paper and see how they're going to react in your painting before you ever use them? Or do you know the colors you want to use and you just go for it?
That's a good question. I like that. Yeah, like little test thingies on a separate piece of paper, right?
Yes.
Yes, I do that. Definitely do that. But not to a large extent. I also, watercolor is a little different. When you mix color, you mostly aim for the mix happening on the paper itself. So a lot of times you may start out with a certain mix, put it over and see it's not right, and then just adjust it. You see what I mean? So whereas in oil painting, I don't really work like that. Because I can pretty much mix it and bring it right over, and it won't change unless I. Does that make sense?
Sure, it does. Yes.
Yeah. So watercolor is a little different that way because it's so fluid. So
Watercolor is
so
interesting. Watercolor is interesting in that even as it dries, it can change tonal value.
yes, I think that's one of the hardest parts about watercolor painting, to have all these extra challenges built in. Like the one you just mentioned is a big one because some of these colors you put on and all of a sudden they lighten up or they change like 30-40%, and you're like, oh my god, that's not what I thought. So all these things, you have to paint so much to learn that, to sort of intuitively feel what it's going to do. That is definitely easier in oils, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting when, when I talk to oil colors, and I love oil paintings. Like you, I love art. I mean, to me, it's about the color, it's about the energy the artist is putting in, it's about the story. It's
That's
all
right.
of these. And when I talk to oil colorists, um, they can kind of paint things as they see them because, as you said, the color is not going to change too much between putting it from the palette to the canvas. Whereas when I talk with watercolorists, which many people come into, and it's a beautiful medium, it really is always from light to dark. So you have to deconstruct the image in your mind and put it back together like a jigsaw puzzle from light to dark. And I think for you, someone who can do both, do you ever apply the principle of the watercolor about taking your image apart and um, putting it together differently from an oil, or do you have you done it so many times you just say I can paint it like I see it with oil, and I've done watercolor so much I know when I go to watercolor it's always light to dark.
Yes, the process is definitely backwards. I call it backwards because when you paint oil and you can put some darks on there, it makes everything easier from the get-go because you always have something to compare to. Whereas in watercolor, you have this white piece, it's glaring white, and anything you put on is like, whoa. And in reality, it might be way too light what you're doing, you know. So, but you won't know until the end. So, and definitely a big challenge there. But it's also a beautiful challenge, and I love watercolor because it's sort of there's a lot of unpredictability within it. So you may plan to go this way, and then things happen another way. You kind of just have to go with it.
It's
Uh,
more of a flow, isn't it? It's not a
yeah,
kind of flows.
you can't if you're one of those people who want to control every brush stroke, you're not going to have a good time. It's not it doesn't work like that. It doesn't want to work like that. But like going back to your question, I think I don't really think about these things when I paint, and neither in oil painting. It's just a process that you stay with, and you're in the present moment basically when things happen, and you don't conceptualize anything or put too much thought into it because it keeps you from your deeper creative place, I think.
Excellent. So, Frank, are you a fan of transparent colors, or do you also use granulating colors, staining colors? Um, kind of what
um I do work 90% even more than 90% transparent. If I can make it work in a transparent way, I will. Because I think that's part of the appeal of the medium, that you can see that white paper through, even in the dark washes. Um, so yes, I do work with transparency as much as possible. Some people say like cadmium reds are or cadmiums are opaque. I never really understood that. I mean, they may be thicker, but if you put enough water into it, they're going to be just as transparent. As for granulation, certain granulating colors are just beautiful. You know, we all know ultramarine blue granulates, and if you have something with in a background where that granulation happens, uh, one of my favorite DS colors is really a green umber, German greenish umber, and that's a granulating color. So if you mix those two, for instance, you get like this beautiful background. Yeah, you know, there are things that's part of what the medium does, and I think you have to learn to exploit those things, um, that the water does for you, because you're not really doing it, you know. So staining colors, not so much, because I'm one of those people who like to be flexible with removing things easily. Like if, for instance, if you have a Prussian blue, for instance, that would be very hard to remove. So you'd have to really be careful. Okay, once that's on, you know, you don't want to try to scrub that off because you'll just ruin the paper, basically.
Very good.
But I have to show you one color that I got accidentally from your company, Daniel Smith, which I love. And I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you right now. I've been using this neutral tint,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I like it. It's a good color. But for some reason I had this Payne's gray, blue gray. And I never used it. I had that tube sitting around, I want to say probably 5 years.
Wow.
And then I ran out of that neutral, so I'm like, what am I going to do? I didn't order paint, so I started using this Payne's gray, and I just love it. It's
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think from now on I'm going to use that. I'll show it to you. Hold on. Just want to see if I get that name right here. Payne's blue gray. That's it.
Beautiful.
I never knew it existed.
And use that to bring down the intensity of the color without washing the color out.
You know what this is really like? It's more like a black, like an ivory black almost. And I know ivory black in watercolor is not the same as an oil painting. I personally think the ivory black is more like the neutral tint in watercolor. So you want something that's like a black, basically. You can mix with other things. And the ivory black has kind of like a little bit of a purplish tinge to it, doesn't it?
Yes.
And this Payne's gray kind of does that. It's very strange because the color name would not reveal that to you. So just to show you, you have to experiment. Sometimes you find things out by accident, you know.
Yeah. So Frank was the first person that we ever did a dot card for. He was the artist that we went back and forth to develop the dot card for artists. Now we have uh, many of them. We send them all over the world, so artists can look at Frank's palette on the dot card and see the colors that he likes and why he likes them. So you were kind of our inspiration there, Frank, of having us take off and do dot cards. Now they're everywhere in the world.
That's so awesome. I do remember when we started talking about this. It was quite a while ago. And I was not aware that I was the first one, actually. I heard about that later. And
So
it was kind of painful to get get all the colors right and see, okay, what do I really include? Because one of the problems artists do, their palette always changes, or at least, you have colors you always come back to. But a lot of times, like I just described, there's a new color and you're like, oh my God, this is so much better. So, and then once it's on the card, it'd be, yeah.
You can always add a different color for you, Frank.
Very good.
So
Yeah, the next one will be different again.
Frank does workshops all over the world. And so, Frank, I wanted to ask you, would you have a tip or technique that you could share with the people watching that you really like? So something you could share with them.
A tip. Yes, I would like to stress that I'm sort of traditionally trained artist. So when I learned, I did actually an art apprenticeship. So when I was still living in Germany, I painted with, my mentor was an Italian painter, and he was a very traditional painter. So the color mixing I learned from him is very traditional, and that kind of stuck to me to this day. So when I mix colors, I use, and this is maybe my tip, try to use primary colors as much as possible with anything you paint. And that may sound very strange, but if you think about it, how nature really works, the prism of colors that are based on the blue, the red, and the yellow, if you stick to that as much as you can, your paintings look up a lot fresher, a lot more spontaneous, a lot more luminous, because these colors you're mixing sometimes, or you're trying to mix with too many pre-mixed tube colors, are sometimes very difficult to achieve, because they like to create themselves with the primary colors. I give you an example. A really simple example is the color orange. The color orange is just a secondary color that you can mix with the yellow and the red. But I tell you, you get much better oranges if you use the yellow and the red, as opposed to using the orange from a tube. It's really true. So and the thing with watercolor we spoke about earlier, and this may be even more so with the medium of watercolor, because these pigments, they like to mix themselves on the paper. So and the less you can interfere with that process, the better it will look. And that's just from my own experience, and I think a lot of other painters would attest to that. If you mix too many colors, some, as you know, John, some of these tube colors, they already have like 2, 3 different pigments in it, right? So let's say you mix it with another tube color that also has 3 pigments in it. That can get very confusing. So you can do that in small areas for certain effects. That's great. Like I'm thinking within a flower or something. But if you do bigger washes, bigger backgrounds, I would always try to do those with the primary colors as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So today we're in the artist studio with artist Frank Eber from Central California. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I wish you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'm really honored that you thought of me.
I always think of you, Frank. So I wish you health and safety. I look forward to seeing you again in person. So
yes, let's hope for that. Let's say a little prayer for that.
In the interim, kind of like you were saying, I've never contacted so many family members. I've gone through my siblings, through my first set of nieces and nephews. Now I'm on my second set of nieces and nephews. So it is a great time to be able to contact family and friends.
Yes, yes, I agree. Yeah, we got to make the best out of the situation. We cannot we have to stay positive. I mean, the humans have lived through much worse periods before. I think it can be done, but if everybody helps and everybody stays, I think it's very important to put good energy out uh, uh, to keep that momentum. We don't want more negative energy, please. So,
All right, Frank, thank you very much.
all right, John. Thank you.